Hello and welcome. I would like to start off by saying a big thank you to Book Chat with Pat and her mod squad, as well as Ven's Book Corner. They both made community posts as they had seen I had set a goal of wanting to reach 200 subs by September, or hoping that I would. And thanks to both of their communities coming over and showing support, as of this recording, I am now at 203. So thank you so much to all of you. And to my new subscribers, I hope you enjoy your time here. You'll find bookish content, nature videos, and of course my silly cats, as well as some videos about the feral colony on Fridays. In this video, I will be talking about 4 different book events and what I will be reading in July. So it's going to be a rather busy month, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. And this is about as close as I get to an actual set TBR-ish, because it always tends to change, and I'm a mood reader, but I'm very much looking forward to all of these. First, Don't Die July. That event is created by Ven's Book Corner and The Bookworm. Be sure to check out their channels. I'll have links down below, as well as going to hashtag Don't Die July for more information about that event. And it's reading horror novels, as you may have guessed from the title. So I'm very much looking forward to revisiting an old favorite, and that is Michael McDowell. I have done a video on his novels before. For those who may not be familiar with him, he actually wrote the screenplay for Beetlejuice and The Nightmare Before Christmas. So not only did I enjoy his horror novels in my late teens, but I also enjoyed 2 of the movies that he wrote the screenplays for. His books are described as Southern Gothic. If you're going to read them, I would suggest keep in mind the time period they're written in, the time period they talk about, because some of it is definitely different than you would hear today, but it does demonstrate the differences and how things were at that time. The Amulet, as you can see by this creepy cover, is an object that goes through a small town. It may or may not be paranormal. He doesn't really 100% tell us, so part of that's up to the reader, but it is rather interesting how this object goes from one to the other. It's definitely a creepy read. The other book that I'll be reading in July, and also by Michael McDowell, as you can see on that cover, gives you a bit of an idea what's going on. This is called Cold Moon Over Babylon. It's a story about what happens when rich people want your land, when you're not in a financial position to fight them. What happens when a parent chooses to ignore the abhorrent behavior of their child, and rather than dealing with that early on, just allows it to accelerate, and the consequences for that older parent. So there's really a lot to this story. There's the horror aspect, there's the family dynamics. If you can hear in the background, that's Xena, who is going to need her puffer in a bit. The weather's starting to get a bit warmer again. You okay? She says she's good, even though she's going to cough a little bit. Humans sneeze with allergies, Xena coughs. You good, kid? It's about you may think you've gotten away with something and how those events catch up with you much later in life. It is definitely well worth the read. And as I was looking down, I just noticed on the front of the Amulet, the finest writer of paperback originals in America today. That's by Stephen King. Those are the two books that I will be reading for Don't Die July. The other event that I'm reading for, and this is a continuation from June, is Book Trek 2024. That event was started by Revenant Reads, Vin. Be sure to check out Vin's channel as well as hashtag BookTrek2024 to see all the other content creators who are involved and all the different books that they're reading as well. So last month I managed to read 3 books and watch 3 movies, all related to the original Star Trek series, which is my definite favorite. I grew up in the 1960s, so they're the ones I met first, although I also enjoyed Star Trek Next Generation and Voyager. This month, I am continuing on with the Star Trek Log series. That was written by Alan Dean Foster, and these are adapted from the animated series created by Gene Roddenberry. So we had the scripts from the animated series and then turned them into stories. Each logbook contains 3 different stories. They're an enjoyable read. It's the original Star Trek. These were published in the 1970s, and it's a great way to revisit some old favorite characters. So this month, I will be continuing on with log number 3 and log number 4. And if you've watched my last book haul video, I'm pretty sure that was the Oops, I Did It Again thrift store shop. I was very happy to find this series again, as I had unhauled it years ago. Silly me. As part of an away mission for the Book Trek event, I started The Story of Physics. This has been sitting on my shelf and waiting for quite some time. This is written by Anne Rooney. I'm not sure if I will finish this before the end of August. I started reading it the other day. So far, the little bit that I've read is very interesting, and it has useful information, beautiful photographs. It's well written thus far. It's just the material is going to take me a little while to process. As I've mentioned before, math and physics is a lot of formulas and things. And for some reason, for me, that doesn't come easily. The irony is I can figure out chemistry no problem. Maybe it's because it's the connections and combinations, but math, other than basic math, the geometry and such, and physics, it just takes longer to process in my brain. So that's going to be a 2-month and possibly longer read. Those are my 3 reads for the Book Trek event this month. Another event that has started in July is Rocket Summer. That was created by Michael K. Vaughan. If you're wondering why I'm looking down, I usually make boondoggles on people's names, which, sorry, but now I've learned to write them down so that I can get it right during the video. For more information about this event, be sure to go to Michael K. Vaughan's channel, Book Chat with Pat. Rocket Summer is about classic science fiction. Now, there are prompts, and it's broken into 4 different weeks and time periods. For me, it's a good excuse to revisit my H.G. Wells box set that I picked up in 2022. I've read all of the stories once, and it was great to revisit one of my favorite science fiction authors. This month, what I will be reading is The First Men in the Moon. I love this story. It's silly. There's no way it's true or accurate, but it's just a fun and enjoyable read. The other book that I'm planning to read again is The Invisible Man. I've never seen the movie, and I just for the first time read this, I think it was last year, 2023. So I'm looking forward to revisiting that story. Of course, and I read this decades ago, The Time Machine. This book also includes his other short stories, The Empire of the Ants, The Cone, The Lord of the Dynamos, The Country of the Blind, The Stolen Basilisk, The Door in the Wall, The Sea Raiders, The Platner Story, In the Avu Observatory, and The Land Ironclads. It will be nice to revisit those short stories as well, because although I've always remembered The Time Machine, both the story and the movies, the other short stories were new to me, so it'll be fun to revisit them. Now, the box set also included The Island of Dr. Moreau. I remember reading this in my teens. It's a story that always stood out for me. I read it again last year, and it isn't an easy read because it has to do with animal research and just a lot of different things. It very much reminds me of Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and so many other books of when is too far with science. So I won't be revisiting Dr. Moreau, but it is an excellent story with important messages to it. Just be warned, there are issues with animals in it. The fifth book in the collection is The War of the Worlds. This is definitely top of my list, enjoyable read. Again, like The Time Machine, I had read this decades ago. I've always enjoyed Wells's writing. I've noticed from watching other booktubers lately, there are Wells books I have yet to read, so I'll be going on a search for them. Although War of the Worlds would certainly fit into Rocket Summer, this is, for me, an October read. And on October the 30th, which is when I air my War of the Worlds video, not only do I talk about the book, about H.G. Wells, about the events that occurred with Orson Welles' radio program and why there was such a panic, I also listened to The War of the Worlds, the musical. I first heard War of the Worlds, the musical, on an 8-track. That tells you how long ago I first heard it. I looked for years to find another copy of it, and I finally did track one down. I think it's over 10 or more years ago now, and I found it on a CD, which made me very happy. And since then, it has become my October 31st tradition to listen to War of the Worlds. If you haven't heard this version yet, it is narrated by Richard Burton. The songs are incredible. The musicians and the singers, it's just amazing. The one that stands out for me, because I'm a Moody Blues fan, is the song by Justin Hayward. But it's a wonderful experience. It follows the story, and there you go. Who would have thought War of the Worlds could be such an amazing musical? Those are waiting for October. That's probably the closest thing I have to a tradition in my home. The final book event that I want to talk about is the Banned Book Project. And yes, I did have a video a while ago about why I'm putting that a bit to the side. At that time, I was up to 12 out of 24 books, or so I thought. Thank you so much, Vin at Revenant Reads, who I did a buddy read with, and we read The Dead Zone by Stephen King. I didn't realize at the time that's also on the banned book list, so I'm actually now up to 13 out of 24. And later this month, Vin and I will be reading Cujo, which it turns out is also one of King's books on the list, so that takes me up to number 14. So many thanks, Vin. Without even knowing it, I'm moving forward on that goal. The book that I found at my local thrift store is 50 Shades of Grey. This is by E.L. James. I'm guessing it wasn't that popular because I picked it up for $1. Normally these books are $4.50. I still haven't started it yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to be reading it. We'll see what my reading goes like this month and whether I end up reading it or if this is going to be one of those rare going back to the thrift store and maybe somebody else will enjoy picking it up for $1. What I found interesting as I was pulling my books together for the video today is on the back it says, a Goodreads Choice Awards finalist for Best Romance. Now, I've heard a number of things about this book. I have a general idea of what it's about, but I haven't been in any big discussions about it, and I can't really say it's a subject I'm all that keen to read about. So when I picked it up, it's because I knew it was a banned book for $1. You can't really go wrong. I'm just really going to have to decide if this is how I want to spend my time with the banned book project or whether I want to get into some other things and just unhaul this. Let me know down below if you have read this book or if you think it's worthy of a read. Also, to find out more information about the banned book project that was started by MJ at Reading This Life, you can also go to hashtag 24BB to see what other content creators are saying about the project and the numerous other books that they've read, why they think they're important reads, and so much other information. So be sure to go check that out. Along with those 4 reading events throughout July, I also have my pile of other books on the go. I'm happy to say that in the last few days, I've managed to finish 2 that have been waiting from my 2023 to be read pile. So I'm getting there. I think I still have 4 or 5. So hopefully I'll get to those sooner than later. But one book that I've been curious to read, and again, it's funny how things all click together. But I decided to read The God Delusion. This is by Richard Dawkins. I also found this at my local thrift store. It was interesting because at the back of the book, he has a list of books cited or recommended. And I had to chuckle. I haven't heard of the majority of the authors, to be quite honest, but one that I have heard about, and only recently, is Michael Shermer. I was just talking about his book that I read, Why People Believe Weird Things, Pseudoscience, Superstitions, and Other Confusions of Our Time. It was fascinating because I've never read Michael Shermer before. I found him at my thrift store a few months ago. I enjoyed his writing style and his book. It was a fluke that I happened to see Dawkins in my thrift store, and now, boom, there we go. Shermer's one of the people he recommends. I already have a page marked to quote when I'm going through this, and I've also mentioned I do notes in books, so in here I'm only on page 31. There are 2 preface sections to this, one for the paperback and then the original from the hardback copy. This was published in 2006. I found it interesting because where I made note here, a good first step would be to build up a critical mass of those willing to come out, thereby encouraging others to do so. Dawkins is talking about people who do not believe there is a God and coming forward. And that's what this book is all about. So I'm very curious and interested to see where he's coming from and the points that he makes. But that sentence caught me because of the term critical mass. That comes up in the Celestine Prophecy, the first book by James Redfield. In fact, insight number 1 from the Mayan manuscript is critical mass. Collecting a group of people who think and believe the same things and uniting and building that energy and information. So I found it very interesting that Dawkins would use that term as well, because it isn't something other than a science book that you would hear that terminology. I am looking forward to the read and finding out what this author has to say, very much because just the other day, a friend and I were talking about how a belief system, whether that's a spiritual life or a religion, helps in those difficult and challenging times. And yet, in the preface, this author has already said, well, no, you don't need that, and you don't need it to keep you on a moral path. So we'll see what I think by the end of it. This reminds me, interestingly enough, of Paranormality by Professor Weissman, about how by the end of that book, you won't believe in the paranormal. Spoiler alert, yes, I do still believe in the paranormal. No, he did not present his case in a way that changed my mind, partly because of the way that he did some of the research and presented it. But I'm mentioning that book because on the front cover of Paranormality is a commentary by Richard Dawkins supporting that book by Professor Weissman. It's like I say, connections, 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 whether it's information within the book and a book recommended, whether they're supporting each other, whether it's how the books happen to come to you, whether it's the information you needed when it could do you the most good. I find there is always something, if you're looking for the clues and wanting to make those connections, they're definitely there to be seen. Other people may take it otherwise. So that is everything I have planned to read in July, which covers 4 different book events, as well as some of my other reading. And we'll see by the end of the month how much of this did I get done and what were my thoughts about the different books. Let me know in the comments down below if you're participating in any of the events that I've mentioned. Be sure to check out the description box and head over to the channels that I've mentioned for more information, as well as excellent content about a variety of different genres. If you found this video to be of benefit or enjoyable, be sure to give that like button a little tickle, as that helps tell the YouTube algorithm that, hey, people are watching and they're interested. So they send the video out to other people and the community grows. If you haven't already subscribed and you enjoy content of a bookish nature, nature videos, or silly cats and feral cats, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you know when I upload content that may be of interest to you. And until next time, take good care.